The volcanoes closed, not that that's stopping anyone. An update on the cruise ship scandal, Walrus news, and more on this episode of the Reykjavik Newsdesk. So you probably heard that a volcano erupted here on Monday. And even though I am, quite honestly, terrified of volcanoes, that was a really good day for this channel. It was also a really good day for Iceland. I mean, we were already looking at what was going to be a record year for tourism in Iceland before this eruption even happened. And eruptions have been good for tourism in Iceland since Eyjafjallajökull. But there's a limit to what even we will put up with in the name of tourism. And we draw a firm line at people endangering their own lives. So on Tuesday, Civil Protection announced the opening of a walking path to a viewing area for the eruption. That's a viewing area for the eruption, not the eruption area itself. And by Thursday, the police had closed it down again. Why? Because people were endangering their lives. Not you, though. I know my viewers are very reasonable, sensible, very smart people. This was other people. As I reported, it's not just the lava that you need to worry about when it comes to an eruption, although the lava is certainly dangerous, but also poisonous gases. And yet hundreds of people were pushing their way very close to the eruption site, sometimes walking through clouds of poisonous gas with children strapped to their backs, and many people were getting super close to the lava itself. Well, maybe they didn't know any better. Maybe they thought it was safe. Sure. But when some of these people were confronted by rescue workers who were telling them, hey, you need to get out of the area, it's really dangerous here, some folks started verbally abusing these rescue workers, which I think is bonkers. I mean, first of all, rescue workers in Iceland are primarily volunteers. Second, they're supposed to keep you safe. Like, verbally abusing rescue workers to me is like squaring up to a firefighter that's trying to rescue you from a burning building. But even the folks who were behaving themselves were taking unnecessary risks for whatever reason. For the Vine? No, wait, Vine ended in 2016. For the gram, yes, they were doing it for the gram. Anyway, police are on the scene trying to keep people away from the eruption area now, but even then, people are still trying to sneak past them to get to the eruption site, which is really astonishing. I mean, the path there is some 10 kilometers long from like the closest accessible point. I don't even know how far people are walking if they're trying to sneak past the police. And it's not 10 kilometers of like smoothly paved road. No, this is rough terrain that requires like proper hiking boots and proper gear, packing food. It's going to take hours to get there. And it's even more dangerous to try to pull a stunt like this now because authorities have made it clear that if you get yourself into a tight spot out there, you are not going to be rescued. And this is coming from a country that has rescued people from glaciers and mountaintops in the middle of blizzards. So this deserves some elaboration. You see, when lava cools, it cools from the outside in. So you might be looking at what looks like completely cooled and hardened lava, but it's really just like a skin that's like a centimeter or a couple centimeters thick, beneath which is molten lava. And so if you walk out onto this fresh lava and then realize, oh no, this is actually really hot molten lava that I'm standing on top of and I'm scared and I could hurt myself, I better call the rescue team. It's not going to happen because there's no safe way for the rescue workers to be able to retrieve you from the lava. You're completely on your own. Another thing that bears pointing out is that craters form as the lava that comes out of the fissure begins to cool and build up and cool and build up again. And this can form walls behind which is a great deal of molten lava. And these walls can break and lava can come gushing forth from them, which is a very dangerous situation, and they're predicting that this is exactly what's going to happen at the eruption site itself, which is yet another reason why you should stay far away from the eruption site, apart from the fact that it's closed there now and the poisonous gases and all that stuff. In other words, this stuff is dangerous in the best of circumstances, let alone if you sneak past police and take a long and winding path there, yelling at rescue workers and barreling up to the eruption site with a child strapped to your back or something like that. Which is not to say that there's no safe way to visit the eruption site. Of course, there are safe ways to do it. And most people, to their credit, who have been visiting the eruption area have been doing so safely. They've been keeping a safe distance. When it's available, they've had respirators or have at least tried to stay upwind of the gases, just keeping a comfortable distance from the eruption and getting some gorgeous shots, which you can see all over social media. And when told by volunteer rescue workers, hey, you should probably clear out, they do so. So the eruption site is going to open again tomorrow, and we'll see how it goes at that time. Personally, I hope for the best. I think that most people who visit these sites do so responsibly, as I said, but if you can't or won't visit the eruption site, again, I've linked to some live streams of the site in the description below. Next up, I should give you fair warning that this story contains mentions of animal abuse, so if you don't want to get into that, go ahead and skip ahead to the next graphic. I'll give you the time to do so now. Okay, the Icelandic horse is probably as iconic as puffins and northern lights. It's a one-of-a-kind breed that's beloved the world over. But if you never heard the term blood mare before today, consider yourself lucky. You see, there's another side to the Icelandic horse industry, and it comprises a very, very tiny portion of it, but it's still there. And that's that pregnant mares have their blood taken from them for the extraction of a hormone known as PMSG. And this hormone is typically used in industrial pig farming so that sows will produce more piglets more frequently. Most Icelanders are completely unaware that this was a practice being done in this country, which is understandable because Iceland is one of only 3 countries in the entire world that still does this practice. But in 2021, a documentary from the Animal Welfare Fund and Tishbund Zurich showed a very graphic documentary that documented abuse of these pregnant mares at these blood farms. Now, this caused a huge controversy at the time, and in typical Icelandic fashion, absolutely nothing changed because everybody was pointing fingers at one another. The Food and Veterinary Authority, also known as MAST, referred the matter to the Icelandic police in January of 2022. And now the police have said that they've dropped the case because they were not able to get evidence from organizations overseas, which makes you wonder what the South Iceland police were doing with this case during this entire time. But anyway, reporters in Iceland contacted these foreign organizations and asked them what was up, and they said, we didn't withhold any evidence from the Icelandic police. We told them to contact the German police because we believe that that's the safest way to transfer this sensitive information is through the German police. And to the knowledge of these organizations, the Icelandic police never contacted the German police for this evidence. Meanwhile, the European Free Trade Association Surveillance Authority, also known as the ESA, had asked MAST in May, hey, can you respond to this, please? Because blood farms violate Europe's animal welfare laws. They gave MAST till July 10th to respond. That deadline came and went. And so the deadline's been extended to September 15th. So what happens if MAST misses that deadline? Probably nothing. I mean, it's not like EFTA is going to kick Iceland out over this. So we'll just see what comes of this. In lighter news, foreign nationals now comprise some 18% of Iceland's population, or 70,000 people. While Polish people comprise the largest ethnic minority in Iceland at just over 25,000 people, there have been a great deal of Ukrainians who have moved to this country in the past 2 years. According to data from the National Registry, there are some 3,247 Ukrainians who have registered addresses in Iceland. Icelandic nationals also increased in number, with some 1,000 of them either being born here or moving here between last December and July. So if you haven't been following the cruise ship scandal, let me get you up to speed. Last week, a cruise ship that was parked at the port of Akureyri in North Iceland was chugging out an unusual amount of emissions. And people complained. Representatives of the ship told the press that it was just harmless steam, and the Environment Agency was a little bit suspicious about this claim, and they called for an onboard investigation. So they did one. And yeah, it was mostly steam. Turns out the Environment Agency got receipts from the crew that showed where they bought their fuel, and yes, it was legitimate fuel. The problem was that their scrubber malfunctioned, and a scrubber is a machine that is supposed to clean most of the pollutants from what comes out of the stacks on top of a cruise ship. and it malfunctioned for a little while, and so it was producing more steam than usual. Now, there were some pollutants in this steam, but the Environment Agency says that these pollutants were well within the safe limits. So there you go. Just a normal amount of extra pollution that wouldn't be there if the cruise ship itself wasn't there. Lastly, a marine biologist has been warning people not to get too close to walruses. Now, in recent months, walruses have been visiting Iceland frequently, particularly on the west coast, from Hafnarfjörður up to the Westfjords. And no, walruses are not native to Iceland, but for some reason they like visiting here. When they do come here, normally they just kind of sprawl out on a beach or on the pier of a harbor. And walruses seem like pretty laid-back creatures, but marine biologists are warning the public that, don't get too close to them, because if they perceive you as a threat, they will attack. And that makes sense. I mean, it's a big animal, and they're not exactly used to a lot of contact with people. Even though they're curious about people, if they perceive you as a threat, they will attack you. So if I see a walrus down at the harbor, I'm not going to go down there and take a selfie with my arm around it. I'm not going to try to feed it Doritos or something like that. I'm just going to take some photos of the walrus from a safe distance and let it be, and let it swim back to wherever it came from. And that's exactly what the marine biologists are advising people to do. So if you come to Iceland and you see a walrus, just let it sunbathe, which is pretty much all walruses do apart from swim and eat fish anyway. So that's all I have for you today on the Reykjavik News Desk. Again, be sure and like and subscribe. And just as a small update, this Monday, my single topic video on the cultural and political divide between urban and rural Icelanders will air. Now, this is a video I've been looking forward to making for a really long time, and I'm very glad that it won the viewer poll. The viewer poll is a poll that I put up on my Patreon, wherein viewers decide what single topic it is that I do in a single topic video. Furthermore, the Saturday after that, that's not tomorrow, but the Saturday after, I'll be hosting my next Ask Me Anything session. And this is always a really great time. This is when patrons and I get together, and yes, questions are asked, sure, but mostly it's just a chance for us to hang out and have a laugh and have a really nice time. It's always a lot of fun, and I really hope to see you there. And you can take part in both of these things through my Patreon, which is linked below in the description. Which reminds me, I want to thank Corinne Vasquez, Marion Ward, Christopher Hunter, Marianne Moores, Kimberly McDaniel, Iceman98, and Octavia Hrun Jonsdottir for being patrons on the $20 level, Ian Kingsley and Laura Johnson for being patrons on the $15 level, and Christine Trowbridge, Hafstein Himmeliomi Weregenoson, Stephen Ellis, and Vivi Carvajal Schaffner for being patrons on the $10 level. You folks rock. That's all from me at Newsdesk. Be good to each other.